If you think that until one day they come true, Mr. Gibbon was beaten by his own cadres. What do you think he will do? Nothing.
Your views. And if politicians steal, definitely they steal for the future, so that they can live well. For heaven's sake, we even put the list. Let the people talk. Every Tuesday and Friday at 9 a.m. on Phoenix FM.
Good morning, it's 11 minutes gone after 9 o'clock. Welcome to Tuesday's edition of Let the People Talk. Our guest on the program this morning, the Tonse Alliance spokesperson, joins us this morning, Mr. Sean Temple. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Very well. How are you, Rich?
I'm very well, thank you. It's very good to see you. How is the Alliance? How is the party? How is the Alliance? How is the party, first of all? Because obviously, you do represent a political party. And then also you can just, how the Alliance is as well.
Yeah. No, the Patriots for Economic Progress is doing very well. We are growing by leaps and bounds, especially that our people are very excited now due to our being part of the Tonse Alliance. They are able to see that it's very, very clear that we shall be in government next year. So they are very excited. In terms of the Tonse Alliance is doing very, very well as well. We are enjoying a lot of unity. We are enjoying a lot of honest discussions among ourselves. And we don't shy away to face and discuss issues that we might not agree on. So we believe that over the past couple of months, we've been able to build that brotherhood among ourselves. And we believe it's a big asset because the biggest challenge with most alliances is the issue of unity, the issue of being able to agree to disagree on certain issues. You get the point. That is what tears apart most alliances. But for us, even when we have differences of opinion, we are able to discuss and resolve and move forward as a single entity, till it turns.
Yeah. Yes. So there is. I know the last time that you were here, I asked you this question, and I know you had said that it wasn't the right time to respond to it. But obviously now we're in 2025. This was 2024 when I asked you this question. We're now in 2025. We're in March. We are, give or take, you could make the argument that we are under, maybe under 15 months away from the launch of campaigns proper.
Yes.
At the moment, many people still don't know who the representative is from Tonse or who the torchbearer of Tonse is or will be. Are there any indications from within the alliance or those conversations have begun to say this is the person that will begin to rally on forward?
Rich, I think you haven't been monitoring the news very well because the Tonse Alliance chose its 2026 presidential candidate. When we had our inaugural General Congress at the launch of the Tonse Alliance at Palm Valley Resort on the 7th of November, we identified Dr. Edgar Chagwa, the 60th Republican president, as our presidential candidate in 2026.
Okay.
And that position has not changed.
Okay.
As and when it changes, we shall communicate to the public.
The reason I wanted to ask, the reason I asked it the way that I asked it is obviously, there are obviously legal ramifications, legal challenges that exist. And that's why I phrased it the way that I did. Because a lot of people will say, but what we know is that they can't stand the individual that you mentioned, that they can't stand. That's what a lot of people will say. They'll say, but we all witnessed a constitutional court judgment that said that he couldn't stand. So when you say that this is what you chose, that's the question that people have to say. But what we know is that he is not eligible.
Lucy, prior to the Michero Chizombe matter, where the Constitutional Court issued a judgment on the 10th of December 2024, there were 4 other judgments by the same Constitutional Court, which were in favor of Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu. I'm sure you are aware of that. And then we had the Michero Chizombe decision of the court, which overturned the position that the court had held in the other 4 matters. So from our standpoint, we believe that there is still ample time for us to challenge the decision of the Constitutional Court in the Michero Chizombe case and to have that case overturned, so that President Edgar Chagwa Lungu will be able to stand in 2026. Only after we've exhausted all those channels, which we haven't, are we going to begin to look at other options. Right now, it's very premature to look at any other options. And I must remind you that the game of politics is about strategy. It's not about how much time you take to campaign that will propel you to be liked or to win an election. So for us, that 15 months is a lot of time. You might wish to remember that Levi Patrick Mwanawasa was launched within just 2 months, and then he won. So even 2 days in politics is a very long time. Yes. So for us, we do not believe that we're behind time. We believe that we have ample time, and we shall exhaust all the options available in terms of judicial options at the court. And when those options are exhausted, we believe that Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu will be able to stand in 2026. Because if you allow me to go into the merits of that case, just briefly, you realize that the main reason, of course, the court gave quite a long judgment and they talked about other issues, but the backbone of that Chizombe Michero case and the decision of the court is the per incuriam position of the court. What the court said was that it had omitted to consider sections 2, 6, and 7 of the Constitutional Amendment Act number 2 of 2016 in its other 4 previous decisions. That is the Sishua decision, Chapter 1 Foundation decision, Legal Resources Foundation decision, and Danpule decision. But when we perused those judgments of the 4 cases, we saw clearly that, as a matter of fact, the court did consider the Constitutional Amendment Act number 2 of 2016, and with the OIS provisions, and they listed that in their judgment. So we are in the process of approaching the court. I'm sure you heard in the past couple of days that we've been preparing a petition to file before court, just to point out to the court to say, look, you are saying that you overturned your own position because of per incuriam, because you did not consider sections 2, 6, and 7 of the Constitutional Amendment Act number 2 of 2016. But we want to refer you to your 4 judgments, 4 previous judgments, and we will list the page numbers. Page J45, you referred to these clauses, these sections. Page J48, you referred to this. Page J89, you referred to this. Therefore, you misled yourselves on the 10th of December in the Michero Chizombe case when you said you did not consider these sections 2, 6, and 7 of the Constitutional Amendment Act number 2 of 2016. And therefore, you need to reverse that decision of 10th December 2024 because it is that decision which is per incuriam. Yes, that's our position. Okay. And I can assure you that the Constitutional Court, once we file our petition, I'm very confident that they will have no option. Because what happened to Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu is a great injustice to prevent him from standing in 2026. And I think it is immoral for any person to begin to position themselves to take over from President Edgar Chagwa Lungu as a 2026 presidential candidate when we haven't fully exhausted all the legal options available to us.
Okay. Yes. Can I also just ask you, because you mentioned that you will be filing a petition, do you know when? Is there a time frame of? And again, I know politics is all about strategy, so you may not want to tell me. But is there any time frame? Is it very soon?
I can answer that. I can assure you, Oluchi, that we intend to file a petition. Today is Tuesday. We intend to file a petition before end of day on Friday this week. Okay. So before end of the day, Friday this week, our petition will be in. We took a little bit of time because we needed to polish it up and just make sure that it is solid. But we are on firm ground. We are on very firm ground. We are on very, very firm ground.
Can I also then ask you? I mean, you, as you said, 7th November. You during the convention, you chose a candidate. But have you decided on a message? Because again, the last time you were here, we had this conversation where we said when you unite political parties, each one has their own ideology, their own ideas. But now have you put these ideas into one thought that you can then present to the Zambian people to say, this is the alternative. This is the alternative that we have on mining. This is the alternative that we have on, for example, electricity, for staple food and cost of living. Have you, as an alliance, come up with a document like that, or an idea like that you can put forth to the Zambian people?
As a matter of fact, we have. But I want to also add, Ruchi, that in terms of our political dispensation here in Zambia, we do not have ideological differences. I'm sure you understand that. We do not have ideological differences the way it is in other countries like Europe, where you've got the left, which is the socialist, you've got the center right, you've got the right wing, who are the nationalists. We don't have those kind of differences. In Zambia, the only issue that we have when it comes to governance is the issue of competence, okay, the issue of integrity, and the issue of accountability. Those are among the issues that we depart from one administration to the other. Some administrations are more competent, have been more competent than others. Some administrations have been more accountable than others. Some administrations have been made up of people who had more integrity, like Levi Mwanawasa. I think his government had more integrity compared to other administrations. Those are the only things that you differ on. So with regard to the Tonse Alliance, our selling point, Ruchi, is the fact that we are a blend of the old and the new. Okay. The Tonse Alliance is made up of the Patriotic Front, which was in government for 10 years. It's not all the policies that the Patriotic Front implemented that were bad policies. A good number of them, I would say 70 to maybe 75% of them, were very progressive policies. And then you have ourselves, on the other hand, other political parties who have not been in government before. And the Patriotic Front are bringing experience and wisdom to the Tonse table, whereas the other political parties, including myself, we are bringing new ideas and innovation to the table. You understand? So that combination, Ruchi, of experience and wisdom on one hand, and new ideas and innovation on the other hand, we believe that it presents a winning ticket, not only for the Tonse Alliance in the 2026 election, but for the Zambian people in terms of uplifting their welfare and their living standards.
So in the morning during our news, and this comes back to what you've just said, the Millers Association of Zambia, their president was reporting a 60% decline in mini mill demand. He attributed it to a few different reasons. One of them, of course, being load shedding. Obviously, the cost is a huge factor as well. From a Tonse Alliance perspective, again, less than 2 years before the elections, what is the thinking behind how to reduce, the price of mini mill, but generally as well, how to reduce the cost of living?
So our belief as Tonse Alliance is that for you to reduce the cost of living, you need to intervene on the key drivers which drive the cost of living. Okay, so you've got a number of well-documented drivers of the cost of living, and these include, number one, the depreciation of the kwacha to the dollar. When the kwacha depreciates to the dollar, prices go up because most of the things we have are imported. Number two, you have fuel prices, or should I just say energy prices, which includes fuel, it includes electricity, and so on and so forth. When fuel prices go up, because most of the goods and services that we consume, the transport component is a significant component, then prices are driven up. So that is a key driver of the high cost of living. And then you've got the stability of supply for energy, primarily electricity. When there's no stable supply of electricity, people resort to alternative sources of energy. For them to do the welding, they will need to run a genset. So you take a wheelbarrow there, instead of charging you 20 kwacha to weld your wheelbarrow, when they're using ZESCO, they will charge you 50 kwacha because they have to run a genset. So that drives up prices. So those are just some of the many drivers, key drivers of the cost of living. And for us, we believe that our government will need to provide the necessary interventions. So for instance, when you talk about the exchange rate, I'll go through each one of them one by one, if you allow me.
Yeah.
If you talk about the exchange rate is essentially a price of forex, the price at which you buy forex, and that price is determined by the variables of supply and demand. In Zambia, we are suffering a challenge in the sense that our supply for forex is very limited compared to the demand. The demand is high because we need to import fuel, we need to import even toothpicks. Whereas the supply is basically our exports. And what do we export? It's primarily minerals. And those mines are not owned by government. They're not parastatals. They're in the private sector. So how does government get some money from those mines to put in its own pocket and meet the demand for the dollar? It is through taxes. So when government reduced things like mineral royalty tax as the first order of business in 2022, when they gave tax holidays amounting to about $3.1 billion in 2022, the overall effect of that is that the source of forex by government from the private sector, the mining sector in particular, reduced significantly. And because we've got a limited supply of forex and an unlimited demand for that forex, the exchange rate keeps going up. That's why it has risen from about 17 to the kwacha to the dollar. 17 kwacha to the dollar in on the 26th of August 2021, when President Hakainde Hichilema took over office, to about 29.1 today. So it has almost doubled. It's because of those variables. So for us, we'll just reverse that. I don't personally believe
a reversal is the only thing needed
of the tax holidays.
No.
Among other things.
Yeah, the reversal of, among other things, all the the variables that you just mentioned. Do you think that those are the only things that would be needed to turn around or to strengthen, the kwacha, or do we, as a country, need to accept that we need to export a lot more than we're doing, and it's not just necessarily through copper, but we need to find other avenues of us being able to export.
Yeah,
I know you and I have often in the past spoken. And used Botswana as an example of the things that they export: beef, diamonds, and all. But whereas here, our largest earner of forex is copper, and yet we can't seem to get it right. Is it time now to have a conversation about real diversification?
Yeah, Ruchi, when you talk about stabilizing the kwacha, of course, you need short-term interventions, you need medium-term interventions, you need long-term interventions. For you to build your export base, it's not something that happens overnight. So that would fall in the category of your long-term interventions. But in terms of your short-term interventions, things you can do right now to stabilize the kwacha, lifting suspending the tax holidays is one of them, because that will immediately result in Bank of Zambia having a sufficient supply of forex. And then once the supply is greater than the demand for forex, the dollar will start going down. You understand? Those are immediate interventions you can implement. Coming to the other issue, the issue of the pricing of energy products, both electricity as well as fuel. Those are key production inputs. We believe that, if you can not source cheaper fuel, for instance, from out there, for one reason or the other, you need to subsidize the supply of fuel. Because the benefit to the overall economy will be far greater than the cost of subsidizing. But also the policy of having greater storage, because when you look at fuel prices, oil prices on the world market, they always fluctuate due to different variables. There were times during COVID when fuel, or rather oil, had negative prices, meaning that when you go and buy, a barrel of oil, they paid you instead of you paying them, because they were trying to avoid those oil wells from flooding. So they needed to keep pumping out, and they can't pump out just into the desert. That would be an environmental disaster. So they needed people to buy, to get it, and go and store it somewhere. So it was negative. So if we had storage, proper and adequate storage, The way the late former President Sata had outlined his vision to say he wanted storage for 10 million barrels of oil, which would be split in each provincial center of Zambia. If that was actualized and we were able to store 1 million barrels of oil in each provincial center, then we would have gone and gotten that oil which was free of charge during COVID, which was in 2020, and would have stored it. Right now, we would have just been using from there. You understand? The bottom line is that when you have adequate storage, which the Tonse Alliance government intends to implement as one of its key policies, when oil prices on the world market are low, we can buy that oil at very low prices. And then when oil prices are too high, maybe because there is instability in the Middle East, or maybe production, the economy in China has gone up, then we can utilize some of our reserves. You understand? That will ensure stability of pricing. So that would be our policy. When you talk about the stability of supply for things like electricity and fuel products, we don't have much of fuel shortages, but electricity. Our vision as Tonse Alliance is to ensure that Zambia is prioritized in terms of supply of electricity, because the cost to the overall economy of an unstable supply of electricity is far greater than the few dollars you can earn by exporting electricity to other countries like Namibia, the way the current administration has decided to position their policy. They argue their position. We respect their arguments. But for us, once the Zambian people vote us into office, whatever little megawatt of electricity we generate, we're going to supply it locally until we have excess. Only when we have excess are we then going to export. Before we have excess, we are not going to export a single megawatt of electricity. That will be our policy.
So there's something that you mentioned about the environment. Obviously, as a country at the moment, we've been grappling with this huge environmental disaster that's taken place in the Kafue River. Is it time, or as a Tonse Alliance, do you think that we need stringent measures that we can put forward to investors who come in to ensure that when something like this happens, if it happens in the future, that the repercussions are known to everybody, rather than a situation where at the moment it sort of feels like the investor can sort of say, well, we made a mistake, we're sorry, we'll give those who are affected mini-meal and et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that we need as a society real laws that impact investors who, through whichever means, cause pollution to our environment? I know that there are obviously legal remedies that one can take, but maybe just from as an investor comes in, we're able to say, look, if this happens, these are the penalties.
Yeah, the penalties by themselves, Ruchi, are not the most appropriate way of addressing these issues of environmental disasters. My considered view is that right now we have the laws in place and we have the regulations in place. What is lacking is competence on the part of government when you talk about the mining department, as well as the issue of competence in the parastatals, including the Zambia Environmental Management Agency, because the regulations are there. The mines and all these, they call them high-risk operators, they are supposed to be inspected on a regular basis. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's twice a month. So if those inspections were done, if people who are charged with the responsibility of doing those jobs did their jobs, we wouldn't be talking about this disaster. Not only the one in Kafue, the acid one in Kafue, but also those mining collapses that we saw in Chingora and other places. They wouldn't be happening. Those things happen because people are not doing their jobs. You understand? So, and it talks about, it comes down to competence. Competence of the parastatals, competence of the government, and the competence of the head of state. Because members were saying that a fish rots from the head. Okay, so you can't blame the parastatal when the director general of that parastatal was appointed by the president, and you can't blame a minister of mines when the minister of mines was appointed by the president. You need, in the same breath, to also blame the president for the incompetence of the people he appointed into place. For us, Ruchi, as a Tonse Alliance, we are going to ensure that when we are ushered into office next year by the Zambian people, we run a competent government. There is no better reward to the people who elected you than for them to have a competent government. When you talk about a competent government, you're talking about competence from the top to the bottom. So the question then becomes, how do you ensure you have a competent government? People need to be accountable in their positions. If you have a job, if your job, Ruchi, is to inspect mines in the Copper Belt and ensure that you check their safety procedures in place, you go to a mine like that, what is the name of that place where there was an acid spill? Sino. Yeah. You go to a mine like Sino, they have an acid dam. That is one of the key risk areas, isn't it? If you're a competent person. So you would go there and say, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen here? Okay, this wall can collapse. If this wall collapsed, where would the acid go? It would go into this stream. Where does this stream lead? This stream leads into Kafue River. This is a major risk. Then you would assess the structural strength of that wall, just to make sure that risk does not materialize. That means you are competent. You understand? But if you are not competent, you go there, shake hands with those Chinese guys, and then walk away, drink your coffee, you're gone. You're not competent. And if there's no one to hold you accountable for your incompetence, then you get away with it. You get your salary until when a disaster like what happened in the Copper Belt happens. So the question then becomes, how can a government ensure that they hire and they are resourced by competent people? It is the culture. And the culture in a government is driven by the president. You understand? The culture. If the president demonstrates a culture of no nonsense to incompetence, no nonsense to waste, no nonsense to corruption, that is the culture that everybody will adopt and everyone will fall in line. We don't have that culture at the moment. And also the other issue is the way you employ people. There is always this talk about, there are a lot of cadres in government. There are a lot of political party cadres in government. And then some people argue and say, but those cadres are also Zambians. Why can't they be employed? You understand? That's the argument. Let me explain to you the disadvantage of employing cadres in government. When you employ a cadre in government, those people who were there chanting slogans for the Chipani, those people feel entitled. They feel that, okay, we fought for this government and now we are there. So we are entitled to be here. You understand? So when someone occupies a job and they feel over entitled to that position, they will not have any motivation to perform because they feel they already worked. So now it's a time just to get paid, whether they work or they don't work. Now, you can get away with it when you have a few, one or two of people of such mindsets. When you have the majority of your government, almost all the permanent secretaries in this current administration are UPND cadres. Almost, of course, the ministers are political people, so it's okay for them to be politically affiliated. But almost 90% of the directors are cadres. Then everyone has that attitude to say, as we suffered in the opposition, we are being beaten by PF cadres. Now we are here. So what can you tell us? The person will go for work at 9 or 10 because they feel over entitled to the position. Who suffers at the end of the day? It is the Zambian people who are supposed to get a service from their government, which they voted into office so that their welfare can be improved. The UPND was never voted into office so that their cadres can start eating because they had suffered enough in the opposition. No, the Zambian people voted for the UPND so that the UPND can deliver a better service to the masses, to the people. You understand? So that's why for us as Tonse Alliance, when we are ushered into office next year and we are building our government, resourcing the various parastatals and government departments, our focus will be competence. And we'll be advertising each and every job. The UPND government currently, they advertise every now and then. I saw an advert for the judges the other day, which is good. But more than 80% of the jobs they employ people without advertising. You just find this one is PS, the other one is director. You know the problem with that, Ruchi? If you don't advertise for a position, you never get the best people who can do that job. It's a question of who is politically connected. But what of that underprivileged person out there who doesn't have any political connections, but they went to school, they are very competent, they are very educated. What avenues, what opportunities lie for them? So you need to advertise, and not only advertising to tick the box to say we advertise, but advertise, invite people, have an objective criteria for assessing their competence and appropriateness for a given position, and identify the best candidate for the job. Once you do that, Ruchi, if I was president of this country and I resourced my cabinet, I resourced the civil servants, the best people in the parastatals, they will do the job. I don't need to do damage control. I don't need to have the best spin doctor as my spokesperson to spin things. The good works will speak for themselves. I can even have time to go and play golf because there are people who are competent, who are able to do the job, which is what is lacking not only in Zambia, but in most African governments.
There's a question here from somebody. This is from Davis, I believe. Global events related to the U.S. government's trade policies and geopolitical tensions are affecting financial markets around the world, which may cause Zambia money balance to change. Everyone's looking at what's going on in Ukraine, hoping the war ends, and obviously hoping that things will change. Is things that are happening outside our borders having more influence within our borders and causing the challenges that exist currently, or is it just something else that's causing the challenges that we have?
Well, there will always be, we live in a global village. You can't escape the external factors that exist out there. We live in a global village, but as a government, as a country, we need to be able to navigate ourselves in this global village. We cannot let ourselves just be pawns. We cannot let ourselves just be victims of external events. Then there's no leadership there. If there's leadership, you need to have a plan in place to mitigate whatever external event there might be. You understand? I gave you an example of the issue of fuel prices earlier. If we had a competent government and they built enough reserves for oil, for instance, and we had adequate refinery capacity in the country. Right now we have zero refinery capacity because Indeni was converted into a distributor of refined fuel already, and we have to import refined fuel from Dar es Salaam. Where we were supposed to be going towards is maintaining Indeni as an oil refinery, and on top of Indeni, build maybe 3 or 4 other oil refineries across the country, for the simple reason that it's easier and cheaper to store crude oil than it is to store processed fuel, whether petrol or diesel, you understand? So we need to be able to process our own fuel. Also, when we rely on a foreign country for processed fuel, the way we rely on Tanzania, we are subjected to more external factors, like you said earlier. There was a time it's been about a year now, when there was a serious shortage of fuel. It mostly affected the Copper Belt, diesel specifically. That diesel shortage was caused by a strike which was taking place at that particular time at the oil refinery in Dar es Salaam, where we buy our fuel. You understand? So the moment you are importing too many things instead of being self-sufficient, you are exposing yourselves. But you can mitigate some of these external variables. For instance, we have this change in policy in the US, which came with President Donald Trump being elected into office, where he doesn't believe in handouts too much. He has, significantly reduced the funding for USAID and various programs. If we had a competent government, we are not supposed to be shocked by that, because it's not the first time that President Trump is coming into office. He was in office previously, and he did make attempts to make most of these reforms at that particular time. The only difference is that at that particular time, he was not in control of Congress, both the Senate and the House of Representatives. The Democrats were in control of the House of Representatives as well as the Senate. So even as he was president, he was not able to implement most of his ideas most of the things that he's implementing now. But he attempted, only that they failed. They were shot down. So if we had people who were able to plan, they were supposed to be able to project and say, okay, we have this upcoming election, Kamala versus Trump.
What could happen
if Trump wins, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. There are two questions that are very similar, by the way. Caesar and Matt, very similar from two different locations. One is in Dola, one is in Matera. Caesar says, I feel what's let down our country is always a lack of continuity in progressive policies. What is the Tonse Alliance stance on aspects such as CDF and debt repayment direction? Matt asks, are you going to cancel the Lusaka dual carriageway contract? That's from Matt. Again, very similar in terms of what they would call progressive policies. What is the thinking from Tonse around what one could consider a progressive policy?
Yeah, and I agree with that view 100%, Ruchi. And I'm happy that there are some Zambians out there who hold the same view, that one of the things that has dragged us behind as a country is the lack of continuity from one government to the other. Before I answer those questions, just allow me to dwell a little bit on that. When you look at the policies that UNIP under KK implemented, some of them were progressive, others were not. And the expectation was that when FTJ took over, he would keep the progressive policies and improve the ones which were not. For instance, the idea of diversification, so that people don't come to Lusaka to look for jobs, where we had industries in almost each and every town. I mean, who wouldn't want to further such kind of a policy instead of setting off all those companies? You understand? So the bottom line is that we've always had this challenge as a nation because our politics is premised so much on hatred. You understand? If I'm an opposition leader, I'll hate the people who are in the ruling party so much, such that when I'm there, I will not want anything to do with whatever they did, whether progressive or not. I just want their legacy to be erased. So it's more about you as an individual instead of the Zambian people. Once we change our mindset to say, when we are elected into office, it is not about Sean Tembo, it is not about Ruchi, it is about the Zambian people whom you are supposed to serve. Then we are going to be looking at things in a more objective manner. We are going to look at the policies, for instance, that the UPND have been implementing. And we're going to say, okay, which ones can we keep? Which ones are progressive? And also, if we are going to terminate certain policies, over what period of time? Because a policy cannot just be terminated there and then, with immediate effect. It needs to be terminated in a gradual manner so that the overall adverse effect is limited. In this particular case, you are talking about the Lusaka-Ndora dual carriageway. That dual carriageway, there was a lot of corruption involved in it. You have a situation whereby before the road is even, able to be used, those people are collecting toll fees. That is daylight robbery, daylight theft. So our view is that that project is beneficial to the people. Once it is completed, it will ease congestion in as much as it was procured in a corrupt manner. So we cannot cancel such a project because it is for the benefit of the Zambian people. However, we are going to hold the people who were involved accountable. The people who received bribes on that project can be rest assured that we are going to pursue them and we are going to hold them accountable. So that will be our approach to that. And then on issues like CDF, we believe in the concept of CDF. However, we do not believe that the member of parliament should be the ones to implement the CDF. We believe that CDF should be implemented by the local authorities. When you talk about decentralization, Ruchi, decentralization can only effectively take place when you utilize the local authorities as opposed to the constituency. Because you must remember that a constituency is part of the legislature. Their job is to make laws. Their job is to use that constituency office and get the views of the people in that particular area, which can be taken to parliament so that we make the laws. The moment we pile up other responsibilities on our lawmakers, then we're going to dilute their primary job, which is to make laws. And then you find yourselves in a situation whereby this year we enact a law, a year or two later, we are taking that law back to parliament to review and amend it. why should the 2-year-old law be taken back to Parliament to be reviewed and amended? It means that when it was initially enacted, people did not pay adequate attention to it. You understand?
Do you think, sorry, Mr. Temple, do you think that we want to do decentralization, but we are not very serious about doing decentralization? I don't know how else I can phrase the question. And sometimes, you know, when I talk with some of my friends, we say the same thing. We say that as a country, we have these ideas, but sometimes it feels like we're not very serious about the ideas. We talk about, for example, diversifying what we eat from being or something else. We're not very serious, but we want to do it. We talk about diversifying from copper to other things. We want to do it, but we're not very serious about doing it. And it's the same with decentralization. We want to do decentralization, but I don't think we've actually thought about how to do decentralization. You look at America, for example. They figured out decentralization. They leave the bulk of what they do to states, and then you have the federal government, and it seems to work.
And even counties.
Yes, it seems to work in that sense. Whatever monies are piled in, for example, if it's Mazabuka where there's Zambia Sugar, all that money is spent within that city, that location. But here it's not the case. So can we achieve real decentralization when you have those situations where you've got money that's going to constituencies, but again, within those constituencies, nobody really knows what they want to do?
Actually, most of that money, you find that it doesn't really go to constituencies. You find that a particular constituency is allocated, let's say 2 million, and then they are told that there's a project which has to be implemented at Ministry of Local Government worth 17 million already. They are remaining with 15. Another project worth 10 million, they are remaining with 5. Another project worth 1.5, they are remaining with 3.5. So you find that at the end of the day, the money which remains at the constituency to be implemented by the CDF committee is only 3.5. And yet on paper, they say it's 32 million allocated to a constituency. So you're very right when you say, we talk about decentralization, but inside the hearts of the leadership of this country, they don't want decentralization. And if I was allowed to speculate, I would believe that is because they don't want to lose control. They are afraid that they would become less powerful if they let the decisions to be made at a local level. They still want to make decisions at central government level, which defeats the very essence of decentralization. And for us as Tonse, we strongly believe in decentralization, and we intend to make it better. And we believe that one of the ways we are going to make it better is to ensure that it is implemented by the local authorities as opposed to being implemented by the parliamentary office for the member of parliament in a particular area.
Okay. Just one last question before the break. Let's see if we can do this in 7 minutes. Are you, as an alliance, opposed to the idea of constitutional amendments at the moment?
Very opposed. Okay. Completely.
All right. Why is that?
When you talk about...
having not seen what the clauses and everything, yes. The principle around constitution, yes. You're opposed completely.
When you talk about constitutional amendment, Luchi, the process is as important as the content. Okay? So the first thing we are supposed to talk about when we're talking about constitutional amendment is what is the roadmap? How are we going to do it? How is the consultative process going to be? Who are we going to consult? How are we going to put together all the various opinions we are going to collect to make sure that they are all factored in? In previous constitutional amendment attempts, we've had bodies such as the NCC, where the stakeholders convened under that body and submissions were made, and there was a procedure of how the various submissions would be processed and given a weight, and how a decision would be made regarding a particular issue within the framework of the constitutional amendment. We don't have that yet. So our expectation from the government, from President Hakainde Hichilema, was that instead of him, or before he could talk about sharing a draft of the constitution, because that is the second stage. The first stage is the roadmap. Without a roadmap, it means that he has no appetite to engage in consultation. And you can't amend the constitution without consultation. There is this talk there's this talk about, no, there are some clauses in the Constitution which are not controversial. There's a word they use. Yes, which are non-contentious. Every part of the Constitution is contentious. Even a comma, before we can move a comma from here to there in the Constitution, we need to agree. Why move the comma? What is wrong with where it is there? How is it going to affect the people when we move this comma to there? You understand? There has to be consensus. Okay. And Luchi, every article of the Constitution is contentious, because if it wasn't contentious, it would not be in the Constitution. It would be in subsidiary legislation. You understand? Because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So why put a provision in the Constitution when you can put it in a subsidiary legislation? The reason it is in the Constitution is because it is paramount, it is contentious, and it affects all the people. So this mentality, this narrative by the current administration to say, no, they have a very casual approach. No, certain provisions of the Constitution, we can amend them. They are non-contentious. Even the so-called delimitation is contentious. You understand? It is contentious. On the face of it, at the beginning, it might appear not to be contentious. You will say, no, but people agree, the Zambian people agree that we need to cut some of the constituencies because they are too big and make them smaller to improve service delivery. That is a casual approach. The question is, what criteria is going to be used to delimit those constituencies? You understand? What criteria? Are you going to use the number of people? Are you going to use the size? Those who have a bigger size of a constituency but fewer people will say, no, use the geographical size. Those who have a lot of people, like Chawama has more than 100,000 registered voters, but it's a small area, Chawama constituency. They'll say, no, you use the number of people. You understand? So it is contentious. Okay. So at the end of the day, you need to be able to come up with a criteria, a roadmap of how you are going to approach this constitutional amendment process. And just for the record, Ruchi, the main reason as Tonse Alliance why we are opposed to this current amendment of the Constitution is because if this amendment was going to be as consultative as it is supposed to, the time is not there between now and 2026 to engage in adequate consultation to ensure that we build consensus around the issues and for us to be able to pass the legislation necessary to amend the Constitution. You need about 3 years for that. We don't have 3 years between now and 2026. That is why we have told government in no uncertain terms that you can amend the Constitution after 2026. Since they are very confident that they are going to win in 2026 without effort because there is no opposition in Zambia, then why are they so desperate to do the amendment now before the general election? Let them win effortlessly, as they've indicated, in 2026 and begin the constitutional amendment process, which should be as consultative as possible in 2026, and we can conclude it around 2029. Then we'll have a solid constitution which would have ensured that all the views of the relevant stakeholders have been taken into consideration.
Okay. Yeah. Let me take a little break from this. We'll return. If you want to call us, I know a lot of people want to talk to you. If you want to call us, you can 226-841-0978-895-895. You can text as well 0978-895-895. We'll be back.
Hey, champ, want to help me with something?
Yeah, Dad, what's that?
Oh, is that
How about we work together on the garden this weekend? You can help me plant those new flowers.
Can I earn money? I want that new bike.
That's a great idea.
So if you can just press the little button, the red button, you can just press it.
Some money.
And
we can even put some of it away to help your money grow.
Grow like a plant?
Exactly, like a plant. With the PruWise Gift Investment Fund, your money can grow bigger and stronger over time. Just like how your flowers will grow bigger and brighter.
Cool, can we start now?
Sounds like a plan. Let's get planting and saving.
Honey, while we're talking about our little one's future, have you checked our latest contribution statement for the Prudential Investment Fund? We might be able to surprise them with an early holiday trip.
Good idea. Let's see how our family money tree is growing. It's great to be part of the Wise family. Working to earn, investing steadily for the future, and ultimately coming to enjoy the rewards together.
Liquid Fiber is unbundled internet to your home for you and your entire family. Say goodbye to buffering and slow downloads. And when you pay for sign-up and your first month of connectivity, you get connectivity in your second month absolutely free. Yes, you heard right. That wasn't a mistake. Sign up for Liquid Fiber and get your second month absolutely free. Visit our website zm.liquidhome.tech or call 400 to get started. Currently only available in select parts of Lusaka. Terms and conditions apply. Liquid Home, where speed lives.
Imagine a world where energy is always within your control. MateWorld makes it a reality. With top-notch solar products, innovative design, and expert installation, we bring sustainable energy to you. From Lusaka to Copperbelt, we're powering homes and business with renewable energy solutions that you can trust. Visit us at 3049 Kishi Road, Park, Lusaka, or Unit 9 Weekdays Plaza in Dola. Ready to transform your energy? Call us. Lusaka 0768-000051, Copperbelt 0768-000052, or email sales@thinkmate.com or visit www.thinkmate.com. MateWorld, enhancing your world.
The Community News is brought to you with the compliments of the Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company. The Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company. Water is life. Value it. Sanitation is health.
The headlines: 9 Kawambwa sugar workers drown in boat accident.
Regrettable. What happened?
And 2 Kasama youths who
Not
risk
sure.
5-year jail.
They didn't have life jackets.
I think so.
That's terrible.
With the community.
I'm sure those who could swim are the ones who survived.
Yes.
9 people have
And you know,
drowned,
it's-
and one is
I know
feared
this,
dead after the boat they were
Congo
traveling in capsized
I've
in
never
Saka
noticed
River in
people
Kawambwa
wearing
district of
life
the
jackets.
Bafula province.
On those
6
boats.
others
What
survived
happens
the
if
incident
one,
after managing to swim
Which one?
to
Which
the
was
river
it?
bank.
when
The
they're doing
accident
the-
involved workers from
Oh,
the
the
Kawambwa
Congo.
Sugar
But all those are
Plantation
very
Company.
those are risk.
agile.
It's risk.
They-
That's a risk factor because what happens?
No, those are very agile swimmers.
Oh.
They can drown.
But what about because what if you because there's the main one, then there are other ones who just
Yes, all those are very agile
Oh.
swimmers. Those are fishermen. They can drown. They can drown. Those can drown.
And appeals to government
those are very
to
agile
expedite
swimmers.
the construction of a bridge across the
Very agile
Kawana
swimmers.
River to prevent such accidents in the future. The Kasama
Because
Magistrates
even for you
Court
to
has set
be
the
part of the
27th
escort,
March 2025
it's
as the
it's
date
an
for
honor.
sentencing.
Uh-huh.
In the
Yes,
matter
it's
in
an
which a
honor. They don't just
20-year-old
pick
man,
whoever is
Lucas
available.
Kame, was
So there is a
convicted of
criteria,
theft.
like you need a certain
This is
level of
after Mr.
proficiency.
Kame
And
pleaded guilty
yes.
to 1 count of theft before senior resident magistrate Willie Banda, contrary to section 272 of the Penal Code, chapter 87 of the laws of Zambia. Allegations are that Kawe, on 2 separate occasions between the 17th of February and the 9th of March 2025, stole 9 50-kilogram bags of cement, property of Esther Sakala, amounting to a value of 1,530 kwacha. In a separate matter, a 19-year-old man has been found guilty of stealing from a motorcycle. Pathias Musonda was found guilty of stealing a Samsung Galaxy
There's a gentleman who is bringing a document
Oh,
from here.
okay, all right.
To end the community news, the headlines once again. 9 Kawambwa sugar workers drown in boat accident. And 2 Kasama youths risk 5-year jail term for theft of cement and phone. Ends the community news. Keep listening to Let the People Talk.
The Community News was brought to you with the compliments of the Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company. The Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company. Water is life. Value it. Sanitation is health.
Attention residents, the Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company, LWSC, has embarked on a mandatory mass installation of water meters across the province. This initiative is designed to enhance transparency, promote responsible water usage, and ensure accurate billing for every customer. As required by law under the Water Supply and Sanitation Act number 28 of 1997, all properties connected to Lusaka Water must have a meter installed. Please ensure that the LWSC team have access to your property during installation, meter reading, and maintenance. Please note, once installed, it is the responsibility of the customer to protect the meter from theft or vandalism, as tampering with or destroying water meters is punishable by law. Installation of water meters begins March 2025. For any queries, contact our call center on 5957. Water is life. Value it. Sanitation.
10:05. Welcome back to Let the People Talk. Our guest on the program today, Mr. Sean Temple, who is the spokesperson for the Tonse Alliance. Let me read 2 text messages, then I'll pick up some phone calls. This is not true. Let the People Talk. Let's start with this. Kelly is in Chingola. Kelly says, what difference is going to make you cancel tax holidays and take the money to fuel subsidies? Why can't we take this to build more schools and universities? So I guess he's talking about moving resource from one place to the other. Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So we are not essentially saying that we are going to take all the money from the tax holidays to fuel subsidies. Of course, there will be a budget. You work with a budget and you see how much resources you need to allocate to what purpose and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is that having cheaper or affordable production inputs has an overall effect to the overall economy. So it is of greater benefit. You understand? It is of greater benefit to subsidize fuel and ensure that you keep the cost of production, both services and products, low. Yeah. It is economics, basically, because when you allow prices to escalate, the way prices are escalating, and you allow inflation to creep in, which the masses call the cost of living, the economic term for it is basically inflation. It's very difficult to control, and it's very difficult to achieve any significant, economic development, because even if you get a salary increment, your employer tells you we are putting 10% across the table, and yet inflation averaged 16.3%, during the year. It means that your salary has been depleted by 6.3%. So you need to control inflation. You need to keep inflation not only single digit, but below 5%. When you do that, then even your efforts to diversify the economy, to grow the economy, will be seen. When inflation is high, it will be like throwing money into the ocean. Whatever you do, whatever efforts you make, you won't be able to see the results.
Which is why, for example, every time the governor is announcing NPR, the hope is always that those measures will be able to arrest inflation, but it never does.
For me, I've always said it in the past, and I'll say it again, that there's a lot of incompetence at the Bank of Zambia. When you look at the interventions that they actually make, you realize that those interventions have not been yielding fruits, and yet they keep making them. And yet those interventions have got other side effects. It's like you are not well, you are sick, and they are prescribing medication to you. That medication is very strong. It has the potential to damage your liver and your kidneys. So the only time you can take such kind of medication is if it is able to cure your ailment. You understand? Then you do a sacrifice to say, even if there might be a risk of damaging my liver and my kidney, I'll still take this medication because it can cure my ailment. But if you keep taking that medication, it's not curing your ailment, and yet it's damaging your liver and kidney, then you need to stop taking that medication. When you look at the interventions that the Bank of Zambia has been making to try and arrest inflation and the depreciation of the currency, such as increasing the monetary policy rate, when you increase the monetary policy rate, first of all, if you allow me, Richard, these economic things you need to explain a little bit. The reasoning behind increasing the monetary policy rate is to try and limit the amount of credit that people are able to access. And that limiting of the amount of credit people are able to access is supposed, on paper, theoretically, is supposed to reduce the availability of money in circulation. And that is premised on the assumption that prices are high because there is greater supply of money. There's too much supply of money. You understand? Which is not the case. You know, when you talk about inflation, there are two types of inflation. You have cost push inflation, and you have demand pull inflation. Okay, what we have in Zambia is mostly cost push inflation. It is inflation which is taking place because the value chain, the prices in the value chain are going up. So when fuel prices go up, that is a cost of production, whether for goods or for services. And it doesn't matter whether someone doesn't have money, they will still need to buy higher priced fuel. You understand? Because it's a cost push inflation. You understand? So you cannot fight that kind of inflation by limiting the supply of money in circulation. The same applies to the statutory reserve ratio. When you talk about the statutory reserve ratio, you are talking about the percentage of total deposits that a bank has, which they need to keep and not lend out. So when they increase the statutory reserve ratio, they are basically telling a bank to say, look, we don't want you to lend too much money. We want you, out of all the deposits you have, to keep this percentage, maybe 15%. The statutory reserve ratio has increased from about 6% when the UPND took over to about 14.5 at the moment. So at the end of the day, banks are required to keep more deposits and not lend them out. The idea is that when they lend them out, they will increase the supply of money in circulation, and that will cause inflation. But despite all those interventions, inflation still goes up. The UPND found inflation at about, it was about 7.8, if I'm not mistaken. Right now it's at 16.3. And I believe that when the figures come out for the month of March, that number might even hit 17 in terms of year-on-year average inflation. So the bottom line is that all their interventions are not working, but they still do the same interventions. There's no innovation at the Bank of Zambia. And it comes down to the earlier point I made. If you have an institution where most of the people who are there because of privilege, are there because they know someone, are there for all the other reasons other than competence, then you have a big problem, a very big problem.
All right, let me go to the comments. Let's start with this one. Hello, good morning.
Lucho, thank you. Go for me to share the following things with the short Tembo. Mr. Tembo,
I can read it.
The problem we are facing today cannot be solved by the same level of thinking that created them. Are we together on this point, Mr. Tembo? Second, you politicians are bad students of history. You don't seem to learn from your past mistakes. There's no way you can bring back an eligible candidate to contest the election. Remember what happened to Dr. Kenneth Kaunda? He had to withdraw from the 1996 election at the 11th hour, and that marked the end of
It's been filed, right? This
you
is the final.
Mr. Tembo, to win the 2026 general election will surely cost you clearly and heavily. Tembo, I was expecting you to tell the nation exactly what you are going to do for the people of Zambia instead of always talking about an eligible candidate, how he is going to file in his nomination paper, and yet there is a court order. Mr. Tembo, think twice before supporting Edgar Lungu. Finally, Mr. Tembo, allow me to tell the nation through this radio station that I can smell victory for President Hakainde Hichilema in the 2026 election. Not because it is going to rig the election like you always arrange, because of the fragmentation among new opposition political parties. Thank you, Lucho.
Mr. Meji, thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Let's go to the other phone line. Hello, good morning. Okay, let's on the line. Let's try this other one. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Good morning. So, what's your name? Just speak up. We can barely hear you. Just speak up. You need to speak up, sir. We can't hear you at all.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, we can barely hear you, sir. You know what? Maybe try and cut the line and try and call back. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
This is calling from Undor.
Sipo. Is that Sipo? Okay, Chilu. Okay, go ahead, Chilu.
Morning, President Ebo.
Good morning, Mr. Chiru.
Thank you very much. In the first place, I would like to commend you for this spirit that you are exhibiting in the alliance. Actually, it does. Just thank you as one president. Because they are tired of this concept of value. Because everybody is able to not to see their incompetence, including the Bank of Zambia governor. We have the Bank of Zambia governor right now. The excellent rate at the president and all the hotline that I would like to give you to the table. Please don't wait. You know that this government, the Galantos and whatever, they try to blind all those people, that group of people that is so vocal in the alliance, so that the alliance can be stabilized. We should to be so united than the way you are right now. If you can they're existing in 2026. That is a very well-known fact. Everybody can move that way. Please, we are hearing you. Even those people that are telling you that this thing, don't pay attention to those people. We are praying for you so that you form government next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chilu. Do you want to quickly respond to those two? Maybe I can also just mention at the start of the program, we had a very brief conversation about the position of the former president, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu. And you mentioned that there would be a petition that would be filed before Friday. We can now confirm, because a gentleman has just put a document, that a petition has actually been filed. This is a bit of breaking news. A petition has now been filed by our guest, who's sitting here, Sean Temple, suing in capacity as spokesperson of the Tonse Alliance. This petition has been filed in the Constitutional Court. The reliefs that are being sought by yourself, and I'll just read them for the benefit of people. A declaration and order that the determination by the Constitutional Court on the 10th of December of 2024 regarding the eligibility of the sixth Republican President, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, to contest future elections prior to the formal submission of his nomination contravenes Article 52.4 as read with Article 100 of the Constitution. Secondly, there's an interpretation on whether, in terms of Article 267.3b and 267.3c, read together with Article 106.1.3 and 106.1.6 of the Constitution of Zambia, the reference to a person elected to the office of president includes Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, who was the incumbent president at the material time, and Article 106.1.3 and Article 106.1.6, when interpreted with the necessary modifications, applies to circumstances in the office of president as they existed on the 5th of January 2026. So that's what you are asking the court to, the reliefs that you're asking the court. I just thought I should just mention that obviously in the past couple of minutes, somebody has just walked in with the petition that you have now filed with the Constitutional Court. So I just wanted to update, because obviously you had said on Friday, but that petition has now been filed this morning. So there is now a petition in the Constitutional Court.
Indeed. Yeah, so when you look, if you allow me, when you look at the basis of our petition, Luchi, it's very simple, really. It's basically about three key issues. Number one, the Constitutional Court is on record that you cannot challenge the eligibility of somebody before that person files in a nomination. And there is a case to that effect. That is the case of Christopher Shakafuswa, just as Attorney General, whereby there was a request to determine whether Shakafuswa was eligible to stand as a mayor of Lusaka while still holding a ward seat. He was councillor in Mandevo. And the Constitutional Court said they cannot determine the eligibility of someone to stand in a future election before that person files in a nomination, and either that nomination is accepted or rejected. It is only when that happens that their eligibility can be challenged. And the court gave very clear reasoning that the reason for that is because if future events are unknown, and if the court determines the eligibility of someone to take part in a future election, they would be basing it on speculation. That was the position of not any other court, but the Constitutional Court themselves. So why did the court, the same court in the Michero Chizombwe case, then turn around and determine the eligibility of Dr. Edgar Chagwa in the 2026 election, which is a future election? So the court contradicted itself, and it departed from its earlier decisions. And therefore, it is our position that that decision of 10th December in the Michero Chizombwe case contravened the Constitution. And the contravention was done by the Constitutional Court itself, which is supposed to uphold the Constitution. Remember, Ruchi, that the Constitution, all of the Constitution has to be upheld by each and every one of us, whether you are a common citizen or you are a judge of the Constitutional Court. You are required to uphold the Constitution. So that is the argument that we are bringing there. The second argument is with regard to the issue of the reasons for the departure from previous decisions. The other 4 decisions, Dr. Sishua Legal Resources Foundation case, Chapter 1 Foundation case, and Dan Pule case. The reason given by the court was that it is because they had not considered sections 2, 6, and 7 of the Constitutional Amendment Act number 2 of 2016 in making those decisions. And because they had not considered those sections, the previous decisions were per incuriam, meaning that they did not fully take into consideration other key aspects of the law. But we have demonstrated in our petition, and I must mention that when we filed our petition this morning, we also included the list of authorities and skeleton arguments. Normally these would come later, but we decided to include them because we want this petition to move expeditiously. We want to start campaigning for our 2026 candidate, Dr. Edgar Chagwa, and this is the end of March. We expect the Constitutional Court to render a decision on this matter by the end of May. That is our expectation, because these are not new issues. The court is merely being reminded of the error and mistake that it made on the 10th of December 2024.
Okay. It's not a bulky document, by the way. It's not a bulky petition. So, I mean, well done to the lawyers for drafting it in this manner. But yes, so in case you just switched on your radio, I know earlier on we spoke about the fact that that you would be petitioning the Constitutional Court. This petition has now gone in. So yeah, bit of breaking news there. There was a text message from Uncle Frank Mtubila, who will be in on Friday for Friday's edition of Let the People Talk. He says the shortcomings of most governments in Zambia lie in priority. As much as a good constitution is important, it is not a priority. Besides, a good constitution does not guarantee a good government and a good president, and it does not put food on the table. It's a positive economy that does that. You can never have a good economy as long as the economic drivers are in the hands of foreigners. Mines in foreign hands, commercial banks in foreign hands, and your massive debt has to be assisted by international financial institutions. It's a tall order. What the President of Burkina Faso has done is reversed all these economic negatives. The result is that 2 years, Burkina Faso is the fastest growing economy in the world, if not mistaken, at 8%. What we have now is only land, and even that is becoming scarce.
Yeah, that is very correct. The welfare of the people, socio-economic welfare of the people is paramount. And you can do all the talking, you can boast and say, I've performed 20 years or ahead of my time. But if the people are hungry, then the people are hungry. And as far as the people are concerned, you have not delivered, you know. And the masses are the ones who matter the most because they are the ones who vote. It is not your cabinet ministers that vote. It is not your cadres that vote, whom you have managed to employ in the civil service, who are failing to deliver to the public. It is not any of us. It is the masses. And right now, the masses are hungry. The masses are hungry both in terms of lack of food, and they are hungry in terms of their desire for better leadership. And, for me as an individual, as well as spokesperson for the Tonse Alliance, I'm very confident that come 2026, there shall be change of government in this nation. And the Tonse Alliance shall form government next year. There's no question about it.
All right. 226-841-0978-895-895. Hello, good morning.
Morning, Bwana Luchi.
Good morning, sir. What's your name?
Yes, you are talking to Brother Namanda Kampumba.
Okay, go ahead, Brother Namanda.
Good morning, Sean Tembo.
Good morning, sir.
Wonderful. I think Sean Tembo, with your Tonse Alliance, this propaganda which you are peddling day in, day out is not going to help you. Number one, you have stated that you as Tonse, when you come into government, you are going to come up with strategic reserves for fuel. Edgar Lungu was the president for 7 years, and he's the only petition to continue as the head of Tonse. Why didn't he do that? Who are you cheating? Who are you lying? Why didn't he do that? The same people you are with today, they were supposed to do it, but they never did it. Now, just because the MPH has mentioned that we are going to come up with a strategic reserve, you pick it as if it is your idea when it is coming from MPH. What you don't want is to agree with the president. He has the policies. He has already directed the government to start this program. So these are the lies I'm talking about. Look at what you are doing now. You are pushing Edgar Lungu, the man who is tired. He did his part to come back to do what? Futalo kaka miza, siliche producer mzika. Padafunda tembo panate sagaru. Lungu did his part, and we know who he is. We know the problems he left for this country. Look at
Brother Namanda, thank you very much. Let's see if we can be as brief as possible so we can take as many calls. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Morning. What's your name? Boniface. Okay, Boniface, go ahead. Just speak up if you can, eh?
Yeah, I just want to comment about Mr. Tembo, what he's saying over the issue of Tonse and even the petition. It's on the focus of Tembo. But Tembo, for the issue of Zambia, ever they support the alliance. Yeah, the alliance, Yamapoito, it's like a tranquility. Ido Marala and the Pali alliance. Yamala and the Pali alliance. Yeah, Pali alliance from the land that we have Zambia. Ever they fly alliance. Elonga Malolesha. If you have Umbele, Lungu, you know, very more position, very more ruling. I see it. Now, where Diabutira, is what the vision. Ilelo, if you watch it, you to the Mona. If you have in a Zambia, I'm on another name. Ilelo, Rituelan. We don't go to our land that the Parioko to let Parioko. No, our let to one and all the in the government. Then at Zambia, I will. Aba imineti pipia ukuya kuri ba UPN kuya vota aba mwenye kwa tifi to batavua kutadizi hivi ile na rafi so mwenye shakuri abo abaleza mu criticize ati aho tapale kumrea because vena balefa abamunye kwa alliance yenu yaoneka lelo kuri government mure pusha ile baiso kora ngoro baleza musha bale langi be bale ba driver lesa usha driver tarafika na mbafika usha bale ba bageza kufixa ushatamambo ishaya kutamba kufisa tabala fitsa so echina nechinga chakutia oseni alo tulibonze kwele na Zambia akwisa chingeli government because naifirwa abantu balechula so ibintu byo kumjia.
Can I respond?
Boniface. Thank you very much, Mr. Boniface. All right, let me get a response from you.
Okay. I'll start with Boniface because he was complimenting us. Thank you so much, Mr. Boniface. We are very appreciative. We know that Arena Zambia want regime change. I think if you do a census, Ruchi, even in the bus, and ask people in the bus out of maybe 18 passengers, how many of them want the UPND to go next year? About 14 or so say they want UPND to go next year. So it's everywhere you go. So we are very confident that there shall be change of government next year, and that the Tonse Alliance will be given the opportunity to run the affairs of this country so that we can be able to improve the welfare of the Zambian people. Coming to Brother Namanda, he raised a question to say, you as Tonse, you are talking about building strategic fuel reserves. Why is it that your chairman, Dr. Edgar Chagwarungu, who is also the 60th Republican president, why didn't he do that when he was in office for 7 years? The reason these strategic reserves were not built in that time by Dr. Edgar Chagwarungu is because he was busy doing other things. He was busy building Kenneth Kaunda International Airport. He was busy building Lower Kafue hydropower station. He was busy building roads, including all these dual carriageways around Lusaka, which have opened up Lusaka and given a decent face to Lusaka. He was busy building one of the longest bridges in Southern Africa, the one in Western Province. What is the name of that bridge? I keep forgetting it.
I'm going to have to check.
Yes. So Dr. Edgar Chagwarungu, in his 7 years, was busy with all these major infrastructure projects. That is why he was not able to do the strategic fuel reserves. But when he comes next year, he's going to prioritize the strategic fuel reserves because most of the infrastructure he managed to do. So now you have the question. I'll pose the same question to Brother Namanda to say, why is it that President Hakainde Hichilema is talking about building these strategic fuel reserves in the last year of his presidency? Where was he in the past 4 years? What was he busy doing? Because he didn't do any infrastructure compared to Dr. Edgar Chagwarungu. We can understand with regard to Dr. Edgar Chagwarungu because he built a lot of infrastructure. What was President Hakainde Hichilema busy doing for him to talk about these strategic fuel reserves at the last hour? So it is very clear which one among the two is an achiever and which one among the two is a failure. Dr. Edgar Chagwarungu is an achiever, and he was also humble. When he came, he said he didn't have a vision, but he knew he had a vision, but he didn't want to overblow himself. He didn't want to raise the expectations of the people. That's why he came in a humble manner and said, I don't have a vision. But then he started implementing. And instead of him talking about to say, I have a vision, we were able to see the vision in terms of his deeds, what he was able to achieve. When you compare to the current president, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, the other day he was saying that what he has achieved is worth the achievement for 20 years. That is what his minister was saying on his behalf. So he spends a lot of time talking about himself and blowing his own trumpet, but we can't see what he has done. What has he achieved for the Zambian people in terms of tangible progress, which people can point at to say, this is what he has achieved. So when you compare the two, there's no question that Dr. Edgar Chagwarungu was a better president, and he remains a better president, and he will be a better president next year.
Sioma Bridge, that's the name you were looking at. The Sioma Bridge.
Sioma Bridge. Yes. So those are the projects that Dr. Edgar Chagwarungu was busy, implementing.
There's a text here from somebody, there's no name on this. But he says, the former president, I don't know if you saw the story in the news thing, the former president, Amos Chanda, says he took control of state as well. Maybe let me rephrase this. But he made a couple of decisions as president when the president was unavailable. But the main question is, what capabilities then does the sixth president have to manage affairs of this if he goes flight mode on running the nation for self-gratification?
There's no evidence to that effect. Those are insults which Mr. Amos Chanda is piling on the former head of state, and for someone who was a beneficiary of the grace, of Dr. Edgar Chagwarungu, I think it's very regrettable. It is very regrettable. My view, if you ask me, Ruchi, is that Mr. Amos Chanda is probably trying to endear himself to the UPND government by insulting his former boss, But if you want to endear yourselves to a certain group and you're insulting your former boss, the people there will treat you with a lot of contempt. They might not tell you, but they'll say, this man insults his boss. His boss now is coming to us. He has no respect. So I think it is total lack of wisdom. You need to appreciate people who've done something for you. Amos was just a reporter for a newspaper, which was, paying him peanuts. And then he was elevated and taken to State House. He needs to say thank you for the opportunity to work with the head of state instead of trying to address him in the eyes of the public. That is totally unacceptable. I hope that along the way, Mr. Amos Chanda will have a stroke of wisdom, and he's going to apologize for those public insults that he's dishing out towards Dr. Edgar Chagwarungu, the 60th Republican president.
Teacher recruitment. There's a question here from Peter Banding at Kitwe. Just rephrase it just slightly. But Peter's main point is that at the moment there are over 70,000 unemployed trained teachers, but we have very few schools. Many teacher training schools have sprung up. He has a suggestion. I suggest that teacher training, more especially private, should be suspended for some time. This is because of the high number of teachers that are on the market, but unfortunately they all can't be employed.
So that one, Ruchi, is a symptom of a problem. The problem is government's failure to create employment in the private sector and with regard to other professions. Because government is only announcing things like teacher recruitment, nurses recruitment. Those are the two things. But people study other courses. They do agriculture, they do this, they do that. So when are those people going to be, employed? At the end of the day, whoever wants to send their child to tertiary education will say, but what kind of profession can my child be, get employment? And they'll say, okay, teaching or medical in terms of nursing. And everybody is going into that field. So it's overflooded now. And there's a lot of unemployment, like rightly pointed. If government was focusing on employment creation in other sectors, and especially driven by the private sector, then we wouldn't have that problem. I can assure you, Roshi, that when you talk about the issue of unemployment, the most sure way of addressing unemployment is for employment creation to be public, private sector driven. The reason is simple. If a person is, let's say, an entrepreneur, and they hire two people to assist them at the shop, and another one is an entrepreneur there, they have two assistants, just like that, you're able to absorb a lot of people. These numbers that government announces to say we've hired 4,500 teachers per year, how many people are looking for jobs? You've got more than 1 million people looking for jobs. So it has got no effect on unemployment. But if government said tomorrow, okay, we have stopped exporting electricity to Namibia, we have stopped exporting electricity to DRC, and since we had ample rainfall, we are going to have zero load shedding. Then people can be able to engage in various entrepreneurial activities. They can start doing welding, the barber shops that had closed can open up, the salons that had closed can open up. You are creating actual employment, sustainable employment. So the approach of hiring 4,500 teachers and thinking that you are reducing unemployment is a fallacy, and it is based on a total lack of understanding of how an economy operates. And there's need for this country to be driven by people who have an understanding of how the economy operates. And those people are us in the Tonse Alliance. We're going to change the fortunes of this country using the same resources. We don't need to go and borrow an IMF loan, do this, do that. No, we will just change the attitude towards the way we do things and change the priorities. Instead of prioritizing export of electricity, we are going to prioritize local supply of electricity. You know.
Let me go back to the phone lines. 226-841-0978-895-895. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Morning, sir. What's your name? John, go ahead.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, John. How are you?
Fine, sir, thanks. Looking at the current status quo in the country present, Dr. Sean Tembo with your colleagues in the Tons Alliance stands a very big chance. You know, there is a lot of hunger going on in the country. And the way the UPNG is doing things is not the right way. For instance, I'll give you a practical example of what is happening in Chama North, how CDF is being misused by the so-called UPNG leaders. I think there was some time back I called on a certain radio station to tell the authorities to go and audit what is happening in Chama North, and up to now nothing has been done. CDF is only being given to cadres only. And you can imagine, I'm sure there are a lot of people who want to access those funds. But imagine one person getting twice in a year. What kind of government is this? Whether they like it or not, Valeria. But don't allow the biggest mistake you are making also is trying to field in the former 60th president, Edgar Chagwa. Bashon Tembo, let Lungu go and rest. He did his party, and I can assure you, if you try to force the Edgar Kavantu, definitely UPNG will have it easy on you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. John. Let me go and pick up another line. Hello, good morning. Good morning. Morning, what's your name?
This is the Kingford Rules, also by Chidia Sparring candidate for Tosara 2026.
Go ahead, Mr. Kingford.
Good morning, Honorable Sean Tembo.
Good morning, Mr. Kingford. How are you?
Salam Mr. President, in the true perfect. I record I do Baba Superstition, I record my shop at the Yavina, this are which each one shop on a winter much of what so much of what is it. Nadam Shabana Sharafe and Ababirim Papa Shopimo due to poor shading 72 hours of rotating. But under what you are just Peter. Number one. Aloni na depo Mr. Sean Tembo, idi asiria mairo tulishindika ba threatening the police kuko ba vetire kuko ba start questioning. What we are taking in the government is that do not focus on your lifting in the opposition, but focus on reducing the cost of living. The issue of fuel of power, Mr. Sean Tembo, go from Malawa fuel on 16 quarter. Pamalawa babadi, Malawa Zambia, West Sapudi Soto Kumoko ba fuel. Adeni vale da UPNG kada hiyo basa ama fuel of government. So ishirempia shako mushia kuisa uyatuma kama president yambi usatishwa ya kule wa president fanto president ya class festival mona fuel kwa tuwanda pole institution. The data that the reason why Zambia was shooting is positive tunashta amara mtemo wa chipaso we are going to increase the power so that tumtira malait. But now 6 months the president is in the state house, but he's still lying like as if he is in the opposition. In the last Short Temple to raise the and will go ahead as the trigger youth members to protest against the constitution. You have to work out the Paturi Munganda, Ulipanga Maluzi Munganda, Mweva, and each group of Munda, the Rona Chinja, Nachipi, Grania Tirakush, Quatuarina Tirana Vikira Kush, Avana Tambo, Patino Bata, how come to a Tambo Grania Tirukunga Shako at the arrestism. If this is what we call rule of law, this is not rule of law, but this is a
Mr. Kinfred. Thank you very much. Do you want to quickly respond to those?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll start with Mr. John, who has been bemoaning the segregation in the disbursement of CDF, specifically in Chama North. And that's another issue, Ruchi, which I always talk about. The way the UPND goes about disbursing their development is very segregative, very, very segregative. Their view is not really to uplift the general citizenry, but only uplift their members. So you find that even the cash for work, it is just UPND structures who are picked to participate in that. You talk about CDF loans, it is just UPND structures. And you can't develop a country if you are going to segregate in terms of who you help, in terms of the citizens. Even the way they implement these so-called projects. Me, I live in Guerrero there. And in Guerrero there, you have CDF projects to, mend the roads, grade the roads. And you also have cash for work, who also try to do the roads. They do all the other roads around my area except my road. And they've been doing that for the past 4 years. In the PF, for me, I was an opposition, even in the PF. And I was not an idle opposition. I was a very aggressive opposition in the PF. I'm sure you remember that. Yes. But when they are grading roads, they would come and grade my road as well. So that is the difference in attitude between the way the UPND deliver development and the way the Patriotic Front used to deliver development. They never used to segregate to say this road goes to this person's house. Which party does he belong to? No, it was just across the board. The UPND are very vengeful. And you can't deliver real development to the Zambian people with such kind of a heart. Because you are a leader. You are in control of resources. You are up there. You have citizens' lives in your hands. So you need to be fair and equitable to everybody, regardless of whether you agree with those people or you don't. Coming to Kinfred, I think Kinfred just re-echoed the same sentiments that I'm, just from talking about.
Okay. There was a line. There's this, I don't know if it's, maybe you want to touch on this, but there seems to be this, I don't know if you can call it misinformation or there's information going on that fuel in Malawi is more expensive or fuel in Malawi is cheaper than it is in Zambia. Where are they getting this fuel from? Have you done any research on this?
Well, my guess, Ruchi, of course we buy fuel from the same places pretty much. But in Malawi,
maybe subsidized.
Yeah, but also, in Malawi they had a problem not so long ago. I think about 6 months ago, they had a huge fuel shortage. They were getting their fuel from Dar es Salaam, and there was a challenge with the logistics, the trucks ferrying that fuel. So it was a big issue. So they changed suppliers. They get most of their fuel now from Angola. What I need to find out is whether the fuel from Angola is cheaper compared to the fuel from Dar es Salaam, because the fuel from Dar es Salaam, most of it comes from the Middle East, but the fuel from Angola, it is mined from Angola just there. So maybe the transport component of it, because fuel, like most bulk products, you find that the transport cost feeds into a significant portion of the overall pricing at the pump. That could be an option. And I've always wondered, we are neighbors with Angola. Angola produces a lot of oil. They refine most of that oil themselves. Why can't we put up a pipeline from Angola, from Huambo area there, Huambo province to Zambia? They are our neighbors. Why do we need to go and get our oil from Saudi Arabia, which is almost 10,000 kilometers away? Because transportation is a key cost. It's a key component of the cost of, the pump price of oil. So that is something that we should be exploring. And if we are the committed government, they needed to address that. But for us as Tonse Alliance, we believe that also the issue of corruption is significant in terms of adding to the cost of fuel. We saw recently that there was a tender where someone was supplying fuel at about 117 million kwacha per ton, then tendered to supply the same fuel at, is it 58 million kwacha per ton. So what caused them to cut the price that significant because they were a sole supplier for a long time, and then they opened up the bidding to allow other bidders. And when they opened up the bidding, the person who was a sole supplier, who was supplying at 117 million kwacha per ton, then came and submitted a bid at about 55 million kwacha a ton. So why the significant cut in price? Were they exploiting us? Those are the questions we need to address. That's why when you talk about the issues of corruption, you know, Luchi, I believe that you can't successfully run a country if you are not firm on corruption. And when you talk about corruption, it is not just about your political opponents. It is not just about jailing GBM over a contract that is alleged to have taken place more than 10 years ago. It is about being able to hold. Yes, it is about holding accountable
Everyone
the people around
accountable.
you. Yes,
It's about holding everyone accountable.
yes, everyone.
Regardless of whether it happened 10 years
Yes,
ago.
yes.
The statute, unfortunately, for corruption is not
Yes.
2 years or 3 years. It's,
Yes. So if corruption only applies to your political opponents and not to your colleagues, and you tell the public that we are going to investigate, or you tell law enforcement that you need to investigate current corruption quietly, how can you investigate corruption quietly? Because the moment you investigate corruption quietly, that is corruption in itself. You understand? So there's no serious fight against corruption under the current administration, and that is why you find that a lot of things are going wrong. They are failing in almost every area. It is, a combination of corruption, a combination of incompetence, a combination of entitlement to positions where people are appointed. It is just a total disaster. This UPND administration is a total disaster, like a total disaster. It was a very bad experiment, and I'm sure it will linger in the minds of the Zambian people for a very long period of time to come.
let me take one last call. 226-841-0978-895-895. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Morning. What's your name, sir? Okay, Mr. Elvis, go ahead.
Bashoni Tembo Mulishani.
Wina Elvis Mulishani.
Ndefe wino mkwai.
Tule mipembera ku tonse, I'm sure mukesa nga twa forming a government kainge mwalite mwakuomba na government of the day.
Elvis, go ahead.
Ndefo kumipusha kutimo bakemu. Ahari economic problems tukuekeyo mulelanda. Nga nimwebo mwalipo. Drought iliko. N'amafuta ya mulelanda okwebakina yajula. Nga fishi mukitire batembo. Because there are short-term measures which the government has put in, whereby they are supplying ZNL minimum. That's one of the solutions the government made. For electricity, we have seen so many people having solar panels, which is very good in diversity. We have diversified from using hydropower to solar, which is very good because it was hydroelectricity. So, otherwise, if we continued with the hydro, measures the government nga tulipambinga natona ikasana bashoni tembo even in the PF amaraiti yale shupa imwe mwali kuntanshi bashoni kulenga kwebati PF na ifidwa. Today you are working with the same PF you say they have failed.
Elvis, we've heard the question, Elvis. We've heard the question. Thanks, Elvis. Do you want to respond to it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'll respond to that. And then there's a question I omitted about why we are sticking to ECL, why we are not considering another candidate for Tonse. So I'll start with Elvis. Elvis said a statement which re-echoes what President Hakainde Hichilema has previously said on various occasions, that by exporting power and bringing about load shedding, he has managed to compel the people to move to solar. which is a better supply of energy. I think that statement by President Hakainde Hichilema is based on a total lack of understanding of the socio-economic landscape of our country. Because when you talk about solar, Luchi, how many Zambians can afford solar? How many? You understand? People in these households cannot even afford matches. You understand? They cannot even afford Pamela. And you're talking about comparing them to move to solar. You know, sometimes when President Hakainde Hichilema issues public statements, I get very, very surprised and shocked because he behaves as if he grew up in a privileged environment. Amakamba mwanga ni enze mwana wa mayaji. You understand? Like he doesn't know the suffering of common Zambians. And yet, we all know that he grew up in a village. We all know that he grew up in an underprivileged household. You understand? Luchi, when we grow up and when we come across some money, we should never forget where we came from. We should never lose the connection with the people who are suffering on the ground. Me, I know that people are suffering in these homes, and no matter how much money I might have in my pocket, I'm not going to assume that any other Zambian or every other Zambian has money. You understand? Never make that assumption, because people are suffering. People need to be helped. And once you as a leader, once you are alive to the fact that Vantuavutika, then even as you draw up your policies, you're going to tailor them to assist people. But if in your mind, just because you were fortunate enough to come across some money and you are well-to-do, you're assuming that everyone else is well-to-do, or those who are not well-to-do, it is their fault, they didn't work hard enough, then you can't be a good leader. You understand? A lot of these things have to do with luck. Some people have luck, they are blessed by God. Others don't have luck, they are not blessed. Their time hasn't come. So, for you to be a successful leader, me, I've always believed that ufunika ushta understand kuvutika kwa vantu, how people suffer and how you can help them. Yes. Coming to the question that Mr. John asked, to say, why are you sticking to the 60th Republican president as your candidate? Why don't you move on? You know, Luchi, it has to do also with the belief in justice. Yeah. For me as an individual, I strongly believed that Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu has not been fairly treated. Okay? He has not been fairly treated by preventing him to stand. You understand? And since me, I'm a strong believer of justice. Whenever I see that someone is not being fairly treated, I will rally behind that person in the interest of justice. And I can assure you that myself, together with the Tonse Alliance, we are going to rally behind Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu. If Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu stood in next year's elections and he did not make it, okay, he did not make it, then after that, the time would have come for him to retire. But his retirement should not be forced on him through Mingalato. You understand? His retirement should not be imposed on him using Mingalato. If the UPND play Mingalato the way they played Mingalato on the 10th of December 2024, then we are going to challenge those Mingalato, because it's not fair to disadvantage individuals, to disadvantage people, because you are playing Mingalato. Everyone deserves justice. The injustice that is being perpetrated on Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu today, if we look the other side, tomorrow the victim will be Sean Tembo. The other day, the victim will be Fred Membe. So whenever you see an injustice, each one of us have a duty and obligation to fight that injustice. And the prevention of Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu from standing in 2026 is an injustice, and it will be fought with all our energy.
Okay. Yes. Mr. Sean Tembo, spokesperson for Tonse Alliance, thank you very much for joining us in the program today.
Thank you, Roger.
We return on Friday. Frank is in on Friday for Friday's edition of Let the People Talk. Have a wonderful next couple of days. We'll talk to you Friday.
This has been Let the People Talk. Let the People Talk.